Will flights to Rwanda stop small boat crossings? Get your calls in now. There's been a huge surge in channel crossings. Over 6,200 people arriving in Britain by dinghy since January. It's up by a quarter on the same period last year. Even this morning, we've seen tragedy strike again, as at least 5 people have died while trying to cross the channel. 5 also died in January. Rishi Sunak's answer is the Rwanda plan, deporting illegal immigrants to the African nation as a deterrent to those who might want to make the trip. It went through Parliament last night, and flights could start as soon as the summer. But is it going to work? Dawn, I'm trying to put myself, obviously it's impossible, but trying to put myself in the position of somebody who wants to make that trip across the channel, has travelled that far to do it, is prepared to do it, even in January. It's going to take quite something to change my mind, isn't it?
Well, this is the problem with this, isn't it? We don't know whether it's going to work, and it's costing an awful lot of money. I think it's £151,000 for each person we deport. And how many are actually going to be deported? I'll believe it when I see it. It's the news this morning, utterly depressing, utterly horrifying. A child was involved in those. Not that it matters how old they are, but as you say, the desperation of those people risking their lives to do that, especially with their children, is just horrific. And we have to do something. Is this the answer? I mean, I really hope it is, Matt. I mean, the only way, the proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating, isn't it?
You'd like to see those flights go, would you, Dawn?
I don't know. I don't think it's the answer. I think Rwanda is a pretty stupid idea, to be honest with you. I think it's a stupid, expensive idea. What I would like to see is a safe and fair way to process asylum seekers. And yet no one seems to be able to come up with it. Instead, we're wasting money on hotels. We're wasting money on Rwanda. And, I mean, who's going to... Have we got planes to take them? I mean, commercial airlines are saying, well, we don't want to ruin our reputation by taking them. And how much... It's just insane. I want something to work because I want people to stop dying.
Kevin, you would agree, I'm sure, that we have to do something. We have to do something to protect our borders.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is the responsibility of any country to do that.
Yeah, so you try and stop the sailings, which is why we're paying France £500 million over, I think, the next 5 years, and they have been reduced to some extent. If people come, you've got to process them very quickly, rather than leaving them for month after month after month in a hotel and not working. And if they're found to have no right to be here, then you have to have an arrangement where you can to send them home. For instance, we did a deal with Albania. There's about 12,000 Albanians coming over. It's a NATO country. We did a deal, and 90% of those who are coming don't come anymore because they know they'll be sent back. That's what you have to do. But Rwanda was a gimmick that Boris Johnson dreamed up 2 years ago. Rishi Sunak was the Chancellor then. He said it wouldn't work. The Treasury tried to block it. In fact, Rwanda's got another £50 million today. It's £340 million already before anybody has been sent. He's gone ahead with it. It won't deter people. One, they're desperate, absolutely desperate, and fleeing persecution or poverty, and they want to start a new life. And 2, they can do the sums. They know the odds on them being selected to go to Rwanda are tiny. So you'll take your chance coming across, as well as it being immoral and a national disgrace and exorbitantly expensive. It won't work.
If we could do the kind of deal that's been done with Albania, with other countries, if we talk about Afghanistan, for instance, there are going to be countries where that's just not an option. And we have to put something in place for those people to say, this is not an option either.
No, well, that's right. People say from Afghanistan, you're not going to return them to the Taliban.
No, or Iran, or Syria, or any of these places.
But there are other countries where you can do the deals. For instance, Vietnam. Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister, says there's been a spike in people from Vietnam because the people smugglers are advertising over there. Now, you could return them to Vietnam. It's an authoritarian country, but I had a son who lived there 5-6 years. And it's not totally oppressive. It's not Afghanistan. But yes, those people who get over from Afghanistan, they would have a right to stay. I mean, we went to Afghanistan. Afghanistan has never militarily attacked Britain, but Britain has militarily attacked Afghanistan.
Well, and the way left it was disgusting as well.
Established that link, and that's one of the reasons people come here now, because of the English and the connections, and they fought with the British Army, and they're terrified now of the Taliban.
We've never had an arrangement like this before. How much of this, Dawn, do you think is about trying to be seen to do something, whether it's going to be effective or not? Because we haven't got that proof, have we?
I think Rishi Sunak pinned his hopes on this because he wants to win the election. Whether he believes he will or not is another matter, but he wants to win the election. This was one of his 5 pledges, wasn't it? It's, I am going to stop the small boats. And I think this is the hill that he has chosen to die on. And as when he was Chancellor, he didn't, as we said, didn't even believe in it himself. The one thing I will take issue with, though, Kevin, is the fact that a national disgrace. It's not great, but we're not the only country that does it. Even the European nations send migrants to Africa for processing as well. So we're not the only ones that do it.
There's a difference between sending for processing and your claim is assessed, and then if you pass, you meet the criteria to seek sanctuary, you return.
In theory, that's what this is going to be about.
These are one-way tickets.
Yeah.
These are exiled. But if you look at small print, if you're a criminal, you've got a criminal record, you won't be deported. So we will keep the criminals and send people who aren't criminals. And then if you commit a crime, when you've been sent on your one-way ticket and you commit a crime in Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, or elsewhere in Rwanda, you're then returned to Britain. So what you're going to do, you're going to take a box of matches, aren't you? And you're going to set something alight. Then you'll be put in jail and then you'll be deported back to Britain.
And
it will not work.
And it's a reciprocal agreement. We take Rwandans in return.
We do.
It's a how did they describe it? A vanishingly small amount, but they haven't actually given us the amount.
No, and look, it wasn't the European Court of Human Rights that said Rwanda was unsafe. It was the UK Supreme Court. And the government's just decided to ignore that by passing a law saying it is a safe country. It's like saying, look, they can pass a law saying I'm 10 feet tall, but I won't be 10 feet tall.
If they can declare Rwanda a safe place, I wonder if they could do that with, say, sort of Iran, for example.
They could.
Iran, perfectly safe.
Let's take some calls. Graham's in Glasgow. Is it going to work? Are these flights to Rwanda, Graham, now they're becoming more of a reality? Are they going to be the answer?
It's not going to be the answer, I don't think, because Britain has dangled a carrot to these people with, the land of milk and honey is what you would say. If I was in their situation and I knew that there was a free ride going on in the United Kingdom, I would do everything in my power to get there. So what's going to stop them just with the small threat of going to Rwanda? There's only going to be a certain amount going there. The rest are going to get through. So how's it going to stop it?
What's the carrot that you think has been dangled by the UK, which makes such a difference between staying in France and coming over here?
Well, it's not safety, because if it was safety, they would stay in the countries out with the ones that they've left. France is a safe country, so if it was safety, they would stay in France. So the only thing that we can think about is financial gain. That's the only thing that you can do, hence the term, the land of milk and honey. It's purely financial with this, and if you're willing to risk your life, your partner's life, your children's life to get over there, that is the incentive.
I mean, you say the land of milk and honey, Graham. That's a term that you've decided to apply to this, and I am putting myself again, trying to put myself in the position of someone that's about to load their family onto a small boat, knowing the risks that are associated with that. I can't believe that I would do that for financial gain. Leaving, France is a safe country. Leaving France to come to the UK, that's the bit I don't understand. I can't see that just being about financial gain.
Why wouldn't they stay in the first available safe country then?
Graham, isn't it often the English language? They have relatives here. That's why they come. And yes, you can work. We've got a deregulated labour market, unlike France. But France has a far higher number of asylum seekers than the UK does.
If it's to do with the language, why do we spend millions of pounds on translators? And why do so many, if they've got families here, destroy all their paperwork? Well, if they've got families, surely they need that paperwork to prove they've got families.
Yeah, so some will destroy their paperwork, you're right. And there will be cases, unquestionably, of people pretend they're from a country that would be considered dangerous in order to get. That happens in some cases, unquestionably, but not all cases.
Not all cases,
and it's quite easy to check if you know the language and you know the culture and you begin to quiz them. That's what you do. That's what we have people employed to do. They're pretty good at it.
OK, I want to take another
No, they're not. That's why we've got a backlog.
No. Well, no, that's because you haven't got enough of the people doing it.
Let's take another call. Jamie's in Somerset. Jamie, is this the answer? The Rwandan policy is going to be reality now. Is it going to provide the answer?
No, in my opinion, it's not, because it then comes into a situation where if people can afford the flights, and if they can't, they get the small boats. I mean, I will just say one thing. I'm actually agreeing with Kevin for once. Actually, I don't normally, but I agree with everything he said actually, and the previous caller, because it's not going to work. Yes, it's the English language, and they might have relatives here, but that's still not a reason. Still not a good enough. What they get reason to come over, because they come over, then they end up quite a lot of people to end up taking all the jobs that are available for people that live in the UK, if that makes sense. So it's not going to stop, because it will then become a financial problem with, people can afford the flights. If they can't, they just get a small boat over. So it's not going to solve the problem. And, we're struggling financially as it is anyway, the UK, well, Britain. So it's not going to work.
But Jamie, if we have to do something, and I think we all agree, we do have to do something to prevent this terrible tragedy that's taking place and this business of trafficking. If it's not this, what is it?
Well, I honestly, I don't know. But I just think they will just come across here regardless whether they can afford to fly. I mean, it's fair enough if they're in dire straits and they, with the trafficking situation and stuff like that, it's horrible. I know they're coming over here for that not to happen, and and I'm all for that. But it still means, it's just not. It's not going to help with the flights, because the flights, it's just going to cause more financial stress on people, in my opinion. And as I said, they'll just cross the channel regardless anyway, whether they got the money for the flights or the money for the small boat, they'll still get across.
OK, Jamie says it's not going to work. Thank you. Grace is in London. Grace, what do you reckon? Could this be part of the answer of preventing small boats crossing the channel?
I highly doubt it. I don't think it's likely to deter many people. And I do not understand why the government doesn't just, instead of spending money on this scheme, spend more money on communicating the message to people in places like Albania that the streets aren't paved with gold. Some people who are coming are in desperate need, and they really do deserve our compassion and support. There are other people who've been misled by traffickers into thinking that they'll be able to have a fantastically wealthy life if they come here. And so people need to be informed that's not actually the case. And I don't know why our government isn't doing more to get that across. It's almost as though the government likes people coming across so that they can then react with anger and get votes off certain people by being angry about it.
Grace. I don't know how that can be, because this is a pledge that Rishi Sunak made back in 2022. To fail to come good on that, I can't imagine that's something that he's enjoying or relishing. And I'm also, I don't quite understand how it would work to communicate.
It's a distraction from some other issues whereby he's also failing the country, and the Tories get some money from donors who own hotel chains. But I also think that if we're concerned about people being sent to hotels in parts of Africa, we also should have concern and empathy for the more than 200 million people in sub-Saharan Africa who themselves live in slums and refugee camps. And I would really like it if we could talk about them as well, and have compassion for those people, because I feel like it's great that there's a lot of compassion from people in part of the political spectrum about refugees, but we really need to have compassion for people in really deprived or war-torn countries as well, and we don't tend to talk about them.
OK, Grace here, Don, is saying that this is a diversionary tactic. And it's true, a lot of focus, political effort has been placed on this particular policy, getting it through, making it work. Is this sleight of hand politics?
Well, as you said, I think it was one of Rishi Sunak's pledges that he made, as you said, back in 2022, to stop the boat. So I don't think he wants to fail on this, because they're not covering themselves in glory in any other area. Is it something people are really concerned about? Is it their number one priority when you knock on the doors campaigning the election? I don't think so. I think it's the cost of living crisis. I think it's the NHS. I think it's the security issues at the moment with the policing, etc. I think they're the things that people are worried about at the moment. I don't think we're losing sleep about this particular issue. Yes, we are concerned about it. I think one very important point Grace did make, though, was the fact that this message isn't out there. If you go to the refugee camps in Calais and you ask people about, well, you do know that you could be sent to Rwanda if you cross, they don't know about this, Matt. So if we're
Well,
not
it's not a reality at the moment, isn't it? So for those people,
but I
it's
mean,
not.
we're not getting the message out there at all. And there is one, forgive me, the name of the country slipped my mind, but there is one African country that has got a campaign out there saying, if you travel to Europe, the chances are you will be sent back. And that has stopped people trying to make that crossing. So we are not telling people about this policy in the first place. So if the whole idea is to stop people making that journey in the first place, if they don't know about it, it's pointless.
See, I think Grace was right about it being a distraction. One, it's a distraction from legal net migration, which went to a record 750,000.
Yep.
More than 20 times the number of people coming in the boats. So the government wants us to look at the boats and not look at the bigger picture, the larger number on its watch. And then secondly, does Rishi Sunak want us to be talking about a stagnant economy, living standards are going to be lower at this general election than the last one? Does he want us to talk about the dire state of the NHS on his watch? No, he doesn't. He wants us to all get very angry about people coming over in boats. That's what he wants.
I want to take one more call very quickly. Amanda's in Lancashire. Are you angry about this, Amanda? And does this policy offer some kind of solution?
I'm actually a bit angry, and no, it doesn't offer any solution. All the money could have been spent on training people to actually process the applications, and also that I've seen an interview with some refugees in the camps in France where they said these flights to Rwanda will not stop them keep trying. They will come back and keep trying. They're wasting money hand over fist.
Well, I mean, it is true, isn't it, guys? Whatever happens, this is going to be expensive. It's going to require manpower that isn't there at the moment. So that is a reality for when and if it comes to be.
Again, Amanda's point was so important a bit that why don't we spend, the billions we're being given to Rwanda and to France to sort this problem out? The 11 billion we're predicted to spend on hotel accommodation. Why don't we spend all that money on a proper organised system where we have well-trained staff who are qualified to process applications and reject the ones that aren't genuine? It doesn't seem to make sense to do anything else.
Amanda is spot on about the wasted money. Rwanda, Paul Kagame, the leader of Rwanda, is laughing all the way at the bank. He's just getting all this money. I think the people sent this year will be about 1.8 million each. There's so few of them. 1.8 million each. Think, Amanda, if that had been spent on processing the claims, deciding who is legally entitled to be here, and so they can work and pay their way, they won't be in hotels, and who isn't, and then you have to try and deal with them and send them home where you can. That's what you need to do.
Let's take one more call. Colin's in London. Hi, Colin. Is the Rwanda policy the answer to our problem of small boats?
No, I don't want any homes.
Colin, are you still there?
I am.
OK.
Yes.
Is the Rwanda policy the answer?
I don't think it is, no. I just couldn't understand why it ever cropped up. The answer is international law. The international law quite clearly says that when immigrants come into a country, or in this case Europe, or countries within Europe, that's the first safe place. That's where they must apply for asylum. They want to come to Britain, let's face it, because the conditions are far better.
Colin, the law doesn't say that. The European Union, which we're not part of, as you know, any longer, has a deal. It's called the Dublin Convention, that you stay in the first country you reach. But it's a European Union deal. Under the United Nations Refugee Convention of 1951, you're legally entitled to travel through other safe countries to get to your destination.
OK. Thank you so much, guys, and thank you, Colin. We're gonna call it there.